Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. Kerry Walker in the house. Hi.
Howdy.
Kerry Walker, who is the lead talent in Alice Eats the Apple. So if you haven't checked out her YouTube show, it's phenomenal, and do it. Go ahead right away. She also has a blog website, Alice Eats the Apple, and her content will keep you really in the current space of what's going on metaphysically and as a human being. She has an awesome take on how to just be a human being in today's changing world. And so we're going to talk about a lot of cool things. And so welcome, my dear friend, Kerry Walker. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Miss Nora.
You're welcome always. It's been far too long. And as some of you may or may not know, I took a bit of a break and I'm back on now. So thanks for joining me. And today we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. I mean, I think we're definitely going to talk about boundaries and where human consciousness are with boundaries. You know who you are, may have noticed that boundary setting is coming up in your minds as something that's really key and important. And not only is that the case, I think, but people are becoming so much more sensitive because of the lifting of the veil to a much more refined degree, that our boundaries are having to be recalibrated and redefined. So let's start with that. What do you think?
Okay, I will be completely honest here. Yesterday, by the way, thank you for having me. And I think you need to be my PR person because I love the way you talk about me. No, thank you for that. Yesterday someone wrote in and they asked about a guest that I'd had on the show, Teresa. I guess we'll go ahead and call her out. And
Teresa Llaneros.
Yeah. And she's lovely and she's just this powerhouse and she's lived a lot of life in her years. And she was just really exploding onto the scene. She's written this book. She's part of the UFO disclosure circuit. And I just hadn't been in touch with her.
Doing a lot of work for Stillness in the Storm.
Was
website.
She really?
Yeah, she was doing a lot of, I think she's a journalist, isn't she?
Yeah, that's what her background is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And she was completely wide open. And I'd actually contacted her too about working with me, trying to develop the show. And this was last year. Amazing. She really is incredible. And so I went online and she's gone. And her YouTube channel I think there's only like one or two films there now. Her website is gone, and I got a little bit panicky, so I reached out to her. I've not heard back yet, but then I actually went in and watched her last thing on YouTube, and she was basically calling out. I think she became wide open, and she was saying boundaries are so important. And she was just echoing what has already been going on and what I've been hearing. And she said, all these things were starting to come in, and we do tend to connect with people and in spirits, and we don't always know who we connect to. And we assume we would know if it's, a nasty or not a nasty. And so I think that's a big deal. And I think holding space for ourselves, our autonomy, our just really trying to check in to what we know is right, and also not giving our power away to other people.
Well, let's talk about that. Yeah, I mean the guruism, and I think you're right on. And how do we do that as we refine? I mean, I have obviously my own approaches that I use with my clients and that kind of a thing. But, for yourself, for your experience in defining your own boundaries, you say the word autonomy. Talk more about that.
Well, I think that, look, I've been told since I was little, I've been told follow no one. And I never really understood what that meant. And it was always in the back of my head. And then I realized, as I saw friends moving on to ashrams, checking out of mainstream, which I understand mainstream can be tough. And it's, this is this illusion that we live in. And just because it's my way doesn't mean it needs to be anyone else's way. Right. So I want to preface this by saying that.
Sure.
But I feel that the veil, as you say, the veil is lifting, it's thinning, and we have access. And I think there was a time that we needed the guru, we needed the priest, we needed someone to connect us. Maybe they came in much wider or much more open. I don't know if that's right. Anyway.
I agree.
Now,
like maybe it's
the case now.
Maybe it was a necessary human evolutionary phase. It's a phase or an epic or era.
Well, and I think that it's a very, and I've written about this. I feel that when we wake up, it's a two-prong, I can't say the word, and the word doesn't matter. Anyway, it's a two-prong approach. It is one is you're opening up and you're learning, and you devour everything. I don't know about you, but I mean, I was researching, I was hungry, and I was thirsty just for so much information.
I remember that, girl.
Do you remember? And
yes.
It's more of a remembering, and we're called to different things, but you also have to do a lot of healing, because I feel that if you become too unbalanced, it's like the tire that sort of blows out part of it, and so I think that the double approach is the best, at least for me. And we can't just give our power away and say, Nora, fix me. Nora, I want to follow you. Whatever you say is gold.
Right. Well, and I know in my experience that I've had experiences where I start to get that tunnel vision where somebody has something that's really juicy to me and I want to consume it, and then have them, you're my mentor, you're my guru, you should show me the way so that I know. And then something catastrophic happens that is like, it's that pedestal thing where they fall from the pedestal because you've put them up there and they can't possibly be something other than they are. And that can be completely devastating. And how do we find balance in that? And I think you're right. Like I think we've moved from a place of this initial veil thinning, opening up, guruism, and now we're kind of in this space of like, now what? Now we sort of got our sea legs, if you will. We're kind of in this. We're doing it, and some people may even call it like we're in 5D. Like we've moved to this advancement. I don't know. What do you think of this?
Well, I think it's responsibility. I think it's sort of the person that says, okay, I want to get my doctorate. I want to become an attorney. I want to become a doctor. And then you get there and you're like, okay, now what? Oh, I have to actually work. I have to actually show up for work every day. Okay, got it. And I think that we are focused on the process and the path that, okay, you're on the path. What are you doing with it? And that's I've always said that I feel that walking with a foot in both worlds, that is, I want to be a mom. I want to drive carpool. I want to show up for my kids in a great way. Hopefully most days, not every day. I want to be a wife. I want to live the mainstream life and be spiritual, or whatever that means. I mean, that's such a subjective term. But it is, and I remember early on, Cryon really lit me up. Yogananda really lit me up. And both things I went to, like I would go to a Cryon thing. They were nearby. And so I went and I saw Lee Carroll, amazing. And the whole thing was pick it up, read it,
put it down,
send it on its way.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to a monk, one of the SRF monks, and I said, I just want to leave my family. And the man looked at me like I was nuts. And he said, why would you leave your family? I don't know. That's been my experience. I've seen people just get so ingrained. And they leave. And he said, no, honey, anybody that would ever ask you to leave or give all your money, or that's not high vibrating. And so that really put me at ease. And so I've always kind of gravitated towards the folks that say, don't follow me. Just if you like what I say, great, listen and keep moving. because I feel,
integrate it into your own skill set and your own awareness so that it works for you.
well, and that,
Anyone's, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but you said the word integration.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
integration. Mm-hmm.
I love that word, integration.
Well, I do too. Going back to becoming a doctor, a lawyer, you integrate that into a lifestyle. I am not a lawyer. I mean, that's not, well, are you a woman? Are you a mother? Are you a daughter?
Right.
I'm sure you're probably more than an attorney. And I think
just one thing
that gets out of balance.
Yeah.
These identities. So
no,
boundaries,
I think
man.
that's a really good point, because the whole idea of integration is a newer concept, because I think people are still in an environment often when their work is compartmentalized away from their selves. It's like, I wake up and I go and I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm an accountant or whatever. And I think, when you're an artist, a designer, hypnotherapist, it's easier to integrate because you have that artist creative mind. It's a craft. And so it's easier to integrate because it's more who you are, I think.
Right.
But that integration and that refinement, I think, is a huge part of what it is that we as humanity are having to reconcile right now, is that broader, how do we be who we are and still, make the mortgage, make the bills, get fit, have a good time, have a romantic time with our partner, and still advance spiritually.
Right. And I think that's it. I think that's what we're called to. And I think you make a really good point. And it is, so I have recently, we did a show one day on humanism. I want to be human. I came to be human.
Human.
I want to be human, and I like being human. And it is not a bad thing being human. You chose to come, and you stood in line to come, and here you are. And then I think, to a large degree, did you see the cat?
No, I'm just laughing because because I think we've all heard, I am not coming back here again.
Right.
I know a lot of people who absolutely despise this experience of being human.
Well, and yes, and I'm an old soul and I'm not coming back and I'm off the wheel, and good. I'm sure you are. And but we need you here.
Right.
Light workers, come on, man. And
while you're here, what's going to happen? Like, are you going to be in a state of being bummed out about the fact that you are in a human body, or what's next? Like, okay, I'm here, so how can I, like I tell the kids, it's like, yeah, we can do that. But then I also want you to have a good attitude about it too. It's like, yes. And we're going to go for a long walk with the family, and you're going to have a good attitude about it. Like nothing like going on a long walk with the family and bitching and complaining the entire time.
Right.
When are we getting to I need to tie my shoe. I have something in my shoe. My foot hurts.
Whiner. That's exactly right. And it is, I think that so much of it is a distraction, so much of it. And I realize, and that's where I am. I've had a very quiet few days. I've had actually a really bitchy few days, a couple weeks, actually, if I'm being honest. And because I think that, well, no, I mean, which normally means that stuff's coming up for me to look at, or I'm in a shift, because I've gotten, and I realize I'm kind of changing lanes here, but I'm on the same highway. It is.
You're on a fast super highway, by the way.
I'm on the Autobahn. Nah, some days I am. Some days I'm off in the field on my tractor. I'm not really, no, I'm on a bike with a flat tire. I am. I think that's probably why spirit does that to me. It's like, stop. And they throw a rock, or they throw a stick.
They're like, twing.
There you go. And then I fall off. No, I think that there are so many distractions, and I think discerning between what we come to do and in self-defense, it's all like a candy store, but then sometimes you like hard candy, sometimes you like chocolate, it just depends on how you're wired. But I am finding, and this goes back to tying it in with not being able to find my guest, where did she go? There are so many distractions. And for me, it's like, I love talking aliens and UFOs. Really? It's a distraction. I've seen so many people put their their lives on pause, waiting for disclosure, waiting for the new earth, waiting. These are fucking distractions.
Waiting for the shift to 4 or 5th or 7th or 12th D. Yeah, it is absolutely a distraction. And I was talking to my husband about it because he's been like really interested in this. Do
Disclosure.
I even want to out it? Yeah, well, disclosure, but then, the whole Q phenomenon and sort of, it's been interesting to see everybody's response to this. And I'm sure I've talked about it before, but at the end of the day, that too is a distraction. And we get to prioritize what it is that we want to do here. And so what is it? What is it that we're doing? We're having the kitty jump up on it. Come on, just go ahead and jump.
Did, and I had
Come
to
on,
push him
Luna,
off.
come on.
Did I tell you that boy kitty got eaten? He got eaten a couple weeks ago. He lived, but oh my gosh, I'll tell you about that after.
Oh, boy kitty, is he okay?
Oh yeah.
By what?
Well, and I think he had an NDE, and so he's just like been all over the kids and us. Oh, this dog! I almost adopted a dog, and all of a sudden it took out after boy kitty got him. Digression. Okay, so
poor boy kitty. Luna, look over here. Say hi to Auntie Carrie.
Hello. Oh, she's so pretty. She's just so pretty.
Look up here. Look up here, Lulu. Let's see her eyes.
She is pretty.
She's a teeny kitty. She's teeny like your kitties.
They are kind of small. On the
Look at that
side.
little chin. I love the chin face.
Just do it. Just do it. Well, instead of like Pablo, how big is Pablo now?
He's like this.
He's like a gargantua.
He's 2 of Luna's.
He's 2 of Luna. I see a Luna and I'll raise you. So I am really this, it's a distraction. It is a distraction. It is this, whether you hate Trump, you like Trump, you wait for Q, you don't, you believe in UFOs, you don't, you think something's going to come and save you. You are here to save you. You are here to say, and I'm preaching and I will yell it. You are here to save you.
Well, and
you have all the tools to save you.
What if the notion of being saved has already taken place? What if the saving, there is nothing that needs, no one is, what's the opposite of saved? No one is on a sinking ship. What if we actually have been saved? What if that whole perception of needing to be saved is somehow a really false premise?
A distraction?
Yeah, a distraction.
But what do? They create crisis in order to save you. And I'm not sure that, right. And I think that's what Teresa was saying, which is be careful with all of this because she's actually peeked behind, and that's what you're saying in this video. And it's not, and I realize I'm quoting somebody, so therefore am I giving my power away? I don't know. This is just what's been going on in my head.
So the answer is, am I giving my power away? You just ask, no. Do I feel empowered? Yes.
Yeah.
You can share the opinions of others without disempowering yourself. I think it's when you say, I can't speak for myself because the other must answer for me. Or if for example, I won't name any names, but people who refer to religious texts, I won't name any specific religious text, as their manual for life.
Yeah.
And it's like, but the manual for, like, when I read my manual for my car, I don't apply it to my life.
I don't read it. I give it to my husband and say, I do give my power away there because I'm not reading a manual. I don't have time. Give me for a car, it's so easy. They write it typically really like, okay, do this and do that. I do that and I do this. Good. Thank you. Done. Right.
I'm empowered. And maybe I'm taking away my own power by anyway, I'm confusing myself.
That's not it's around Robin. I'm lost.
I'm so confused.
No, you mentioned something. And so I would love to touch on Ascension, New Earth. Do you mind if I go there for a minute?
I welcome it.
Okay. So I'm very vocal, but I'd had a vision. I think it's 2013. And in this dream, I went to this other place. I know I've told you this. Anyway, I went to this other place, beautiful. This woman met me. She asked me if I knew where I was, and I peeked behind the curtain. So they're taking people off, and did I have any questions? Yes. Do we have a job? yes, do you have, anyway, so she explained this whole thing to me. This is way before I was wide open. So, and what was really cool is that halfway into the dream, my children ran into our room at like 5:30 in the morning.
Hold on
And
a second. Hold on a second.
yeah,
Kitty?
I feel like I'm in a horror movie now. Like, Fred, is that you?
Freddy? Freddy Krueger? Oh, it's a bird. Do you hear that? There's like a bird that sounds like a wounded cat. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Talk about distractions.
What? Squirrel?
So sorry.
Oh, no. So halfway through the stream, my kids run in. My husband says, go back to sleep. And I went right back in. And and met her exactly where I just met her.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was really cool. So didn't know what it was. Thought it was really cool. Then I came across a Dolores Cannon video on the New Earth, and it really kind of freaked me out for whatever reason. I don't know. You know, like sometimes when you're not ready to hear something, you feel icky about it.
2013, you were just starting on your awakening, right?
Mm-hmm. I was. It might have even been 2012. It was right around that time. Mm-hmm. No, it would have been 2013 because I would have connected the 2012 idea to this. So anyway, so then forward. So I was coming back from a trip with my mom over spring break. So in March. And I'm writing, and that's how I connect to my guides. I write. I mean, that's how I can hear them clearly. And I was writing, and they said, okay, my guides never say, this is the way it is. I've noticed this. And I've started trying, well, with the exception of telling people to not be distracted, I've been trying to say, instead of presenting things as fact, because just because it's my fact right now, doesn't mean it should be anybody else's. I mean, it's just like planting a seed. What do you think? You know, does that fit? Does it not? Because you have to check in with yourself. And if it doesn't fit, keep walking. My feelings aren't hurt. You know, if you're mean about it.
It's very quantum in the way that you're talking about it. Because if everything is a perceptual interpretation, and what quantum is finding, that each person's perception is actually correct and true simultaneously.
Okay, isn't that wild that we can all be right? And, you know, when you think that person's wrong. Anyway, so they told me, they said, okay, but they always say, what if? They said, what if you actually left that day? What if you actually went to the New Earth that day? And it was like this Sixth Sense, you know, do you remember the movie The Sixth Sense when he goes back and he like views, it's like the montage of his life. And he's like, oh my God, I'm dead. You know, and so I went back and I viewed, and I thought, oh my gosh, what if? And they said, and you're projecting into this reality. What if? And it's like, yeah, but why would I feel irritated and scarcity or whatever it is that I feel that I don't like to feel? And they said, because you've been here for thousands of years, it's conditioning, and you're just programmed to
believe that. Yeah.
But what if you now realize that you can override the programming? I'm like, damn, let's get this party started. And so, and that's what I want to say is that I have friends that are well known in the shift world, like the whole ascension shift world. And, you know, and they see it coming through with this big Hollywood. I actually saw a movie. I'm thinking that's what they describe, this pink thing, energetic wave that's going to knock you down and people are going to leave and the electricity is going to go out, very apocalyptic. It's like, yeah, that never resonated with me. That fear-based, never Hollywood, because in my experience, spirit is so subtle and so quiet and so gentle. It is not a gale hurricane. It is a gentle breeze. And because you'll never get pushed into something you're not either supposed to be pushed into or you don't want to be pushed into. And it's more of a than it is a push. And so that's my interpretation. And then I thought, what if so many of us have already shifted? Because what they told me in that vision was, I said, well, will everyone go? And they said, yes. Eventually everyone will go. But there are people, and it makes sense now because I always had a hard time with, why would they take light workers off when you're needed the most? But if you're taken off and you're projecting in and the essence of you is still there, why not? And what if we started behaving that way?
I think that is the real key thing. What's this?
No, I have chills. I just don't really get them very often anymore. So I'm like, oh yeah. Dude, I like what I'm saying.
I'm on it. I am amazing. I think it's really important what you're saying, because this is something that I seem to be noticing too. And I don't honestly know, and I really want to encourage this show, this platform, to be a not have to have it all figured out place. Like, we can debate and talk and have a constructive conversation about things that maybe we don't necessarily know of, and maybe our views will change, and maybe we'll take deviations. This isn't about being right. This is really about having the environment to have this contemplative interpretation, and notice what's going on in the world, and have conversations about how to work with it. And the thing about acting as if, just allowing ourselves to drop all of the storylines that have kept us contained, and to the extreme, almost like, what degree can we drop the formatting, is how I see it. It's like all of our experiences, all of the genetic components, all of these things are formatting. Not that they're necessarily bad, but the fun thing to contemplate is, can we just let it all shed and become whatever it is that we truly want to become?
Oh, Nora, I love the way you speak, and your words do hold energetic coding. That is
Thanks.
exactly, no, you're welcome, but it's true. That is exactly the way I have said that. And I think this is what you're saying too, is it's seeing the systems all around us. It's seeing, and I've said this before, because this is a recent, and so it is that if we see the systems that we live in, then we can override them. We can't override them if we don't know they exist. It's sort of like Nemo or Neo in the Matrix. The Matrix, we're not supposed to see it. We're not supposed to see it. And so I had a recent dream, and it was an apocalyptic dream, but it wasn't a bad apocalyptic dream, if there's such a thing as not being a bad one. It was this, and I know what it was. It was to show me these systems. And it was like somebody stepped in an ant pile, and all these ants were going everywhere. And we were the ants, and we were getting off the planet. Why, I don't know. It wasn't terrifying. There weren't big monsters. It was, and people, you saw the family structures. You saw, and the example that they gave in the dream was, you wake up and you brush your teeth. And then you eat breakfast, you brush your teeth.
Because if you don't brush your teeth, you definitely get cavities, right? Like, all of these beliefs start to build on each other, right?
Exactly. And it's that simple. And you also stink, and you don't want people to not want to talk to you, because you always have foul odors emanating from your mouth. But
it's so disgusting.
Jack once said, put a piece of gum in that pie hole. And I'm like, nothing like a child to keep you humble. But no, but anyway, so what they were, and it ended, we're on this plane, I've been on a lot of planes recently in my dreams, and I was on this plane, and the captain was going to run us into
planes, right? Plane of existence.
Yes. Oh, very good. Or planes, but yes. And that's, I like that. But he was running us into the side of a mountain as a very quick way to get us off the planet. But no one was scared. Like, we knew, it's like, we've got to go. And so that way he could, a lot of us could jump at once. And so it was an interesting idea. And that's what I walked away from. Because I asked, what am I supposed to get from this? And they said, no, it's about systems. It's about family systems, like all of these created systems around us. And you have to see them. And do you want them? Do you not want them? We have a common friend, and she's very honest about it, and she's very open about it on her videos. And she's like, I know I'm supposed to have multiple partners. And she said, but I can't get out of the idea of, I have a husband. You're not supposed to cheat on your husband, but it's not cheating, because it's an arrangement they have. And that instantly gets a lot of people going, like,
oh yeah.
But it's a system. It's a created system. It's a very
for sure.
I know why it's there.
It's a conventional system.
Well,
It
it keeps
has
people, it's,
practical
yeah.
application.
I mean, I happen to like it, but it's,
Right.
but
Well, and
it's a
that's the
system.
delicious thing about it. Like,
I
I
get to
think,
like it.
yeah, this is the movement into more sovereign choice. And what that means is not only do we get to decide, yes, I want to go right, or yes, I want to go left or straight or up or down, but I also get to have a system or not. Like, or let's think about this even further. Is there a system without a system? Like when one system collapses, do we as human beings reconstruct another system in its place?
Yes. That is a 3D construct. And it is, yes, because we have to have a framework. We have to have a box. Everybody has a box. You have a
Mm-hmm.
box, you have a house, your house holds, I love George
A lens.
Carlin. Well, it is your house holds your stuff, your
Mm-hmm.
clothes hold your body, your skin holds your innards, your soul, did I say innards? I did say innards. Yeah, I'm looking
That's
at
a
my
good
pool.
word. I like
Innards.
innards.
I don't know. It sounds like I'm getting ready to go fry up a squirrel. I mean, it really is kind of funny. But like my pool holds the water that I swim in. Everything has to be contained. And I think that, they're identifiers because
Mm-hmm.
everything's separate. And that's what 3D is. 3D is separation. Well, in order to have that separation, you have to have these constructs.
These containers. Well, but let's think about it in terms of consciousness, because consciousness is not contained. It
Mm-hmm.
is permeable multidimensionally. And so this is something that's fun to sort of consider, right? Like, I was just listening to a thing by Bruce Lipton, who talks about epigenetics and is, really succinct about his use of language around our cells having antennae to receive and also transmit information. So frequency is how we sort of manifest and play out our reality. And so if there is no container there, what I see coming forward a lot in the conversation is the embodiment, the embodiment. And so this is also coming forward in my work a lot, where it's like, okay, I exist between here and here. And so that's sort of the 3D model, right? Like this is the intellectual analytical self in here. And then, but what happens when we fully embody? We become this multidimensional aspect,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and I describe it as having access to our full human technology. And but then where's the container then in that? What happens? I'm curious what you think.
Well, I think what happens is we have so many layers to us. I mean, we have our, everybody is, the auric field.
Mhm.
I think that our containers, this is the hard one, and I guess, I think if you even go below that, you have bones, and then you have
Mhm.
cartilage, but you have the
Mhm.
bones, and then the skin is less, everything gets less dense as it fans out. And
Mhm.
so if you look at, Google it, just the etheric body,
Mhm.
as you move out, it gets lighter and lighter. And I think that
Maybe
is
more
us.
permeable, more interactable. I mean, because we've also talked about the idea of, so I think when consciousness expands, when we have access to our broader capabilities as conscious beings, expanded beyond the intellectual container self, we have the ability so people who are empathic, people who are very sensitive, are aware of the fact, usually, that they're playing in other people's energy fields, right?
Right.
Like that they've got tendrils of awareness connecting in and moving out and sensing and interacting. And so the concept of boundaries become a thing too, right? With that, because it's like, oh, I'm so sensitive that I'm up in everybody's grill and I don't even realize it. We've talked about this. I'm a twin. That was something I learned right away, and you've talked about this too. And so when we get more permeable, as we become more conscious and our consciousness expands, that sense of boundaryness or boundarylessness changes, right? Like it needs to be redefined, recalibrated, doesn't it?
So what's coming in right now is
Mm-hmm.
that Jesus had this ability. He could expand his awareness. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and I've heard, I don't know how you could quantify this, but I have heard as far as like 3 miles and beyond. And so people would, for not, like, they wouldn't know why, they would drop what they were doing and they would wander to him. And that's how he amassed these people. But so there is a way that you can push out, and it's sort of like, okay, what I'm seeing is a pin, how, the pins where you can go out, but you can't come back in, and there is a way that you can push out and you don't have to let people in. It can be a one-way street, and you can manage that. That is a learned skill, but you can manage being able to go into someone's field if they allow you. And by the way, I always ask before I go into someone's field, because I think that is very intrusive. And I think probably because I was always intrusive and I didn't even know it, but but you can go into their field and then you can pull back and not bring them with you. And you can put up, and it's not, everybody talks about shielding up and put the egg on and put the gold light around
Protection.
Yes. And in an STD world, that is a very good word, but we don't necessarily, I think that, anyway, I'm not sure how.
I'm with you. And I think you bring up a really good point. And I would agree 100%. And when I'm working with clients, and what I would say to people too is, whether it's your energy in etheric terms, or it's your energy, like the physical hard, outer shell or whatever, know your energy, know your boundaries, know where you are and where you end, have a sense of that.
Did we talk about what I have this new guide that came in around Christmas time, and we talk about, he was giving me these lessons, and he was saying, okay, now I need you to feel, and I realized that's where he was going with that, sort of the wax on, wax off, but he was saying, okay, now feel this energy. And he said, describe your husband. And I was like, well, and he said, no. And he kept saying, no, back up. Because that was however I was describing. And he said, okay, let's start over. Now take your brother and take your husband and compare crown chakras. And it's funny because, like, husbands, the information would come in and it was very soft and it didn't have to go out.
Oh, look, my throat chakra is needing to clear for some reason. Interesting.
I wonder what that is. And then with pollen. Or pollen. Yeah. Springtime. And then with my brother, it had a little more jagged to it, and it had to come out. And so, wow. and it was the descriptive, but what I realized, and like we went through, I think we got as far as the throat, but we went through.
That's why I'm joking.
Maybe that's it. It's like, come on, Kerry, get on with it. But he was showing me, and it was known. I mean, like, I knew at the time that it was that you need to know what you're feeling. And if you're well aware of it, and if you're not, and he didn't want me to judge it. He didn't want me to judge it as jaggedy bad. And I think it was more of the feeling behind saying, well, it's kind of jaggedy. It's like, nope, let's go back. And it's just
right. Just a quality of it, like describing the texture and quality, of the sensation. Is it silky? Is it smooth? Is it bumpy? Is it jagged in not in a very objective observer,
like a tree? Yeah,
like the bark. You're not like, I mean, even when you come into like a cactus, it's like, oh, that evil cactus, you must be the spawn of Satan. No, it's just be mindful of it.
right exactly,
before you run and step on it.
But that's but that goes along with what you were saying, is that know thyself. I mean, really
know thy energy.
Yeah, because I mean, I can tell you, many times I don't know mine, and I'm beginning to pick up, and it's easy to pick up the ickies, that, and you kind of feel it because you start.
Right, but, is this mine?
Well, and to even think that, to even remember that, oh wait, this might not be mine. I mean, it is. I'm very lazy in a lot of capacities of my spiritual growth, and join
the club. I think that's a really good point. I mean, most people are like, fun. Dude, this is kind of tricky. It's a lot of checking in, and I think we've spent so much time in the construct, and so we're hyper vigilant on things that aren't serving us, and so to actually shift our own poles, if you will, have our own polar shift. Ooh, maybe that's what they mean by a planetary polar shift. Ooh,
could be. I think they actually are moving, but yeah.
But our own internal polls, figuring out like what truly is ours versus not, because as we adjust, each component needs a new calibration to the whole. So like one itty bitty component, and then, what does this mean to the whole? And then where is my energy? Energy will change just from a new interpretation. It's always shifting and adapting and moving and dynamic, I guess is the word. Sorry, my phone is, I'm going to turn that off.
And that brings up something that I want to ask you. So, and I've been playing with this idea. There is a UFO disclosure person that is pretty well known, and I really liked this person's work at the beginning. And I recently started thinking, and this is the slippery slope of all of this, I think, and the distracting part of all of this is, so we grew up thinking these were the good guys, and then we have the alternative people saying, no, these are the good guys.
Right.
And we're like culled from the herd. There are like 4 of us to the billions over here that think this. And what if that's not the case? It's like I don't know. And I know that the answer there is not a good, there's not a bad, but as far as this 3D group, big butterfly just flew in. What if that's wrong? Have you ever thought that? Like, what if the Clintons are really actually going, oh my God, we're just trying to save these people and they're so wonderful, as opposed to, all the other icky stuff that we hear? I don't know. I've done check-ins with that, but what is your thought on that?
I think it ultimately doesn't matter. I think ultimately right or wrong is a moot point. And I know some people really get crazed about it, but listen, like, in my work in hypnosis and as a past life regressionist and regressionist in general, I've seen a lot of stuff come through in sessions where people are not good, but they're good people right here in front of me. And I've had access to my own terribly oppressive, like I was the oppressor, lives where I was a bad person. And I think ultimately, if we are infinite beings and perpetually growing, and this is just my belief, that source is not the judgment one. Source is learning from our experience. And if we are in a simulated reality that we're just playing in, then it doesn't matter. Like today I'll be the bad guy, tomorrow you be the bad guy, and that, to me, it takes a lot of the pressure off. I know a lot of people think that's very flippant and insulting and not and apathetic, but I reject that notion completely, because I am not an apathetic person, but my activism might be very different than another person's. And so my activism is my work and consciousness. And I celebrate people who feel called to activism, but I also reject the idea, slight soapbox moment. I reject the idea that everybody has to have an activism that is sanctified by the group, as you're saying. It's like, maybe my activism is like going to pet kitties at a shelter, or maybe just like be in nature and change the consciousness of others just by sitting and being peaceful. Who is to say what is valuable?
No, I think you're right. And I think that it is, I know people that battle the dark, so to speak. And I know that, you've been with me with some of this. It is like the further down the rabbit hole I get, the more depressed I get, the darker I get. I get very angry with people around me that I think don't see it, that are really good people. I'm like, how can you not know this?
I'm sure people watching can totally relate to this. Like, I have to be informed, and then you keep going, and you feel like absolute crap.
Well, and for what? And what I realized with me, there are people that shield up, armor up, and they go in and they kick some ass. And God love them. We have to have that.
That's their calling. That's their activism.
I'm not built that way. And my guide, Bob, said the same thing. He's like, you got to quit swimming in it. We'll tell you 3 times when you need to know something. You are getting slimed, because I'm like a sponge and I'm absorbing all of this. And it was really affecting my outlook on my life. And I remember asking, so the Bushes now have both passed, and
Barbara Bush died?
Oh yeah, she died like Mom's Day, like last year, way long ago, like almost a year ago.
What? Okay, I am
Yes.
having a
This
totally quantum.
Mandela.
I'm
You're having
having
a
a
Mandela
Mandela
deal.
moment. She has not
Yes.
died in my reality.
Well,
I've
she did.
what?
She died in my reality. Anyway, but my whole thing is
Creepy.
because we had it was when Joyride was
You're
still, I
having
was
a
still.
moment too, people. Write in. I'm curious because I'm going to have Cynthia Sue Larson on next week.
Oh, I want to have her on. I love her. So it is. So that is, so I'd asked, so of course, being in Houston and they don't live very far away from us, we
Right.
get a lot of huge bush stuff.
You
And
guys get lots of bush.
we get a lot. Yes, exactly. Well, and I know somebody, I'm friends, actually pretty good friends with someone that I've known him forever, who was with George Bush. I mean, he was on his detail this last, like right before he died. So, and then of course, if you go to the alternative mode, I mean, that can get real dark real fast. And so, and this guy's like, I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm like, yeah, but you really couldn't tell me even if you did, or I mean, it's very cult-like, right? It's like, there's always something that you don't know. And there's always a reason that you know more than someone else. I digress. But I couldn't, so I spoke with,
Wasn't he a part of the Papa Bush was the originator of the CIA? He was a part of the initial infrastructure of the CIA, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's well connected all around, but it was, and everybody I've ever, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, so, but I asked Laura Eisen, I said, how do you like, it's one thing to read this stuff or to watch it on YouTube or to, go there. But then when you're seeing it in your reality, in like face first in your reality in front of you, I mean, everybody's met the Bushes if you live in Houston. I said, how do you do that? Like, how do you, it's kind of
Like
weird. Like
reconcile it?
like the whole world's merge. And she said, unless I really truly trust the person, then I will believe. She said, but I only with what I see with my own eyes do I leave that big question mark, like, could be.
Oh
And
God,
so
she
that really helped
must
me.
have like a BS detector like no one else's.
I would think so.
Well, and also, I mean, I think something that I've noticed about my own sort of gullibility quotient. I grew up really trusting, really like, oh yeah, and then people would go, ha ha, you're gullible, and I remember just being like, what a weird thing to like be figuring out, like whether or not I should believe something that a person is telling me. Like I just remember being like, this is a weird thing to have to deal with. And I just went along my merry way, believing whatever the hell I wanted to believe. And yes, some of it doesn't bear out and some of it does. And truth to me is so subjective at this point, working with consciousness, that it doesn't ultimately, like, I don't have to have a true, like, show me verifiable, empirical truth. But I
I
think
wouldn't trust it in it anyway. I wouldn't
right,
trust
like,
it even if I would say, you falsified that,
right, exactly, that happens too. And so it's like, then what does truth become under those circumstances? It just becomes, it's a vibrational holding, a vibrational attunement, and if it doesn't work, it filters out, it goes on. And we are, and this is my belief, that we're in a current moment to moment manifestation. Everything in our experience right now is manifesting. So depending on where we're at, what we're thinking, reality is plopping right in front of us. And so if we're 10 steps ahead, but we're still physically interacting, we're not actually aligned with this moment that we're manifesting. And that to me is what we get to play with. Like, how can I really be present for this manifestation that I'm actually creating? And that's the fun of it.
That is the fun of it. And it is, and we also have to realize that we are setting things up for our own growth. And so our higher selves are intuitively our lower selves, which I guess that's what this is. We are setting things up.
Like what I'm sitting on, my lower self.
That would be your lower self. My soul, which would be on the bottom of my foot.
That would be the seat of my soul.
Oh my God, there's got to be a joke in that. I'm not there right now, but but really, it is. We are setting these things up, and it's like we're fabulous teachers that want to give these lessons to people or to ourselves. And so we're creating these scenarios like, what is she going to do now? Let's just throw that in there too. No, but I don't
Thank
know.
you. That is so true. I think a lot of people could probably relate to that. Like people who are so incredibly smart, I'll have them in my work and they're doing things that are detrimental to their health,
Right.
Physically, physiologically, psychologically, you name it. And it's because they're kind of bored. It's like, yeah,
Right.
I'm good at this and I need some challenge in my life.
Stimulation.
Yeah.
No, I think that's very true. I watch somebody very close to me do that sometimes. It's like wait till the very last second. A, they can. B, they like the thrill. They like that thrill. But going back, I mean, I think that's been sort of as we're talking. See, you jiggle stuff loose. That has been something that I've really been grappling with, is this idea of what is truth in relationship to all this information I'm consuming. Because I knew I didn't believe that, the paradigm I was born into didn't seem to work. But I'm not sure this works either. I think there is, again, the unhealed tend to hurt people because they have an ego that is a little distorted sometimes, and maybe they crave things, which I think we all do. And I'm trying not to be judgmental about it, but I see it time and time again where you find out, oh yeah, but he was actually raping people. Oh yeah, they actually beat their kids. Or, oh yeah. And it's like, oh my God. And you're supposed to be the preacher, and ooh, makes me crazy,
Yeah,
but it's an unhealed aspect.
The shadow. Well, you know what's
It is
funny?
a shadow.
Hold on a second. Hi, honey. What do you need?
Does Sam?
Yes. Do you want to be on the show? Want to come say hi and poke your head in on the show? No.
No. Okay.
All right. I love that. And I think, what was just sort of downloading as you were talking is, what if there is no healing that actually needs to happen? What if it's all just a reference point or a calibration point? So wherever you're at, whatever you're vibrating to, you're in a bandwidth of experience that is going to play out, and your wounds, your perceptions, your trash, as the kids like to say, whatever, even though that's a judgment, all of the stuff is calibrating you to this particular bandwidth of experience. And it doesn't have to be necessarily good or bad. I mean, it may be yucky to go through or uncomfortable, but that doesn't necessarily mean that has to be trauma creating. It doesn't. It can be just this thing. Wow, this is an experience I'm going through that I'm not that stoked about, and then what's next?
I love that idea. And, and it's interesting because Ashley, formerly, I can't stand saying that, formerly of the E City Ranch, because that she doesn't have a last name. So that's how I referred her.
Ashley with an I?
Ashley with an I, yeah. And so she asked me recently, she said, what if you could ask your guides to help you tune to the different realms, and I'm going to call them this just for grins because that's the way our brains work, like the 7th and the 8th dimension, or the 4th dimension. What if you could ask for that radio channel, like that radio dial,
right?
Because everything's frequency,
right?
Everything is frequency.
Amen.
So I think that's a pretty interesting thing. And that's what you're saying, is that it's like wherever you're attuned to is what you'll experience. So, if beating the dead horse, I get that, but it's just a fascinating.
No, I think it's
topic.
true. I don't know that that's something that tons of people are actively working within that concept comfortably. And I think what's fun about it is when you do get to the level of trusting, like truly trusting that this universe is open to your interpretation and it is malleable to your desires. And in order to access that, trust is a part of it. You decide to just go ahead and, well, I'm just going to do this, and sort of sink into this belief for the moment. It could be light and sensitive and soft in just a momentary thing. Like, what was it? Something just dropped into my reality. Well, a lot of stuff has dropped into my reality. I'm trying to think of one demonstration of that. Can't think of anything, of course. but we just get to decide and stop. Like, we can have this perception of something, see it in your mind, and then think of what you want, and then just let it go. Just know that that happens, and just watch how the universe shows us. Now, it's not going to come up exactly how we think it's going to come up, because the universe has much more capacity to bring in all of the rich textures that will accentuate the experience and be right at that high frequency of the offering. But it is that trust component. I would love to maybe, I don't know, get an experiment or something, like have people share their manifestation experiences, or exploring their relationship to softening their perceptions of reality for the sake of creating something new, and watch what happens. We should do something. Let go of your framework.
So that's essentially what I hear you saying. And I think that it is recently. And I think that's where I'm like, I feel like, okay, so I grew up sailing, and I forget what the term is. So sorry, somebody write that in, but it's where you don't drop an anchor. And if it's really windy and rough, you can do this. And it's like one sail goes one way, the other sail goes the other way, and it keeps you still in the water. It makes you
I didn't even know this.
Mm-hmm. And so that's where I feel like I am. And recently that is what I've been told. It's because I keep thinking of what is it that I'm doing? What is it that I want to do? What does it look like? Because everybody says, have a goal. Well, nothing ever ends up being the way you think it is, because you don't have all the components that will lead you to where that goal will send you, right? Exactly. Or where you'll end up.
That's part of the adventure.
It is, but if you listen to coaches, and if you listen to, you've got to plan it, and law of attraction people, you got to live it, you got to think about it. I don't want to think about it, because it boxes me in, and I don't know. I know it doesn't work for me, but I don't know what does work for me. Thinking about it,
if it doesn't feel free, does box you in. I totally agree.
And so what if every day we get up and it's what do I want to do today? What makes me laugh? What makes me, I realized, instead of doing these heavy shows that I thought I was supposed to be doing, or interviewing people that are phenomenal and they're so interesting, what if instead of doing that, it really is doing something silly and fun that makes me laugh, and maybe somebody might get something from it and they don't even realize they did. But that's not doing things without a goal, because I found myself starting to think, okay, how can I get my numbers up? How can I get my numbers up? What should I be doing? Who should I interview? And it's like, I don't want to do that. And that's what the Teresa, I think everything comes into your awareness for a reason. And it's not about the numbers. It's not. That's ego. There is that part of me when people used to say that. Tiffany used to say that. But it was like, yeah, but it's a good gauge of what people want to hear. But it's not about what people want to hear. It's about what you're generating.
Totally.
And so tying that back in, it's about leaving the path open for the magic to happen.
Totally. Amen. Woohoo. And yes, because what if you're showing people in action what it is to be soft and excited about your whatever is to come reality, then that perception about it needing to be this catastrophic truth, this detailed, deep, intense, down the rabbit hole truth, it's like, oh, I can actually have, it doesn't mean it's any less profound, is what I think you're saying too, that what if that light, delicious enjoying of the life and the unfolding of the adventure as it presents itself, and being in that experience is just as profound, if not more so, than the staying on the pulse of the shift.
That's exactly right. But it doesn't matter if it's profound or not, because what's profound today, maybe it's not profound, maybe not at all. Maybe your numbers are 30 for the next 2 years. And then whatever it is that you're bringing into the world is there for people to access.
Maybe it's shallow, not deep at all.
What?
Maybe it's shallow.
Maybe we can talk about Spanx in my butt, No, I don't know. I don't know. Because you get, again, the word distracted. We get so distracted by what we're supposed to be doing and what society tells us we're supposed to be doing. And it's, we're just supposed to be doing what we're doing.
We are.
And I have, well, and I have to add to that. And it's not completely fair. There's the disclosure is that I can do that. I'm not trying to make a living doing this. And so I do have, if I was doing this to pay my bills, then yeah, you've got to hustle. You got to figure out how to make it work. So I completely acknowledge that.
Maybe. Since you don't have to do that, maybe it's showing up in this way. And I'm sorry, everybody, if my rocking is annoying you. What I would like to, I think this is all very delicious and fun. We were going to talk a little bit about kids, and we were going to talk about the death thing, because you had, and I'm sorry if you think I'm flipping you off. It's like the English.
No, my kids used to say, see this finger? Ignore it.
That's cute.
So bad.
But so we've got the kid thing, and we talk about that a lot, and that's fun. And then there's also, but I do want to talk about the whole death thing. I think a lot of, well, I just want to let you start, because you have hit upon something that I think is exciting. Go, take it away.
Thank
death.
You for that. I'm on the spot. No, I'm kidding. Huh? No, I think death is in our society, I don't know why, but it seems that in the Western world, death is such taboo. And we again are programmed to be just we're so in fear. I know that we are so in fear of it. And I know that radically changed my life, that when I was diagnosed with melanoma, it changed my life. And all of a sudden I was terrified of dying and leaving my children. Of course, no one wants to go through that. But it's interesting to see how that paralyzed me in 2013, and how now when people, quoting Kerry, because we had talked a lot about this on the show, someone that I sent that sometimes on my show, she's like, I'm like, yeah, you went home. And I do believe that. I do believe that, like right now, my husband's wearing a band. There's a colleague of his is very ill, and it doesn't sound like he's going to make it. But it is, I know, but I can't get there anymore. I can't get to that place of tragedy. Their lessons set up. And so many of us believe in God, and we go to church every Sunday and we do these things, and yet we fall apart. And I am finally to a place, and again, granted, I still have my parents, I still have a grandmother alive, and I will be 48 on Sunday. So, wow. I'm very lucky. I have not experienced a lot of up-close death. I've lost friends. But I think death, I think you can design your own death. I think this idea that death ends, that life ends in a tragedy, that's unfortunately the only death we see. That's we only hear about planes that crash. And so, and I know that that's not exactly, so you may have to ask me a question to trigger me, but it is, I view death very differently now than I used to.
Right. Well, and I am with you on that. I think there are a few things that I think happen in our interpretation of death. One is the presumption of suffering, right? On the part of a person who is observing the dying one. And true, there is definitely suffering. A person who's afraid of dying is certainly suffering, because they are very squeamish about what it is. And I think it gets at the whole idea, like, is there value? The idea of like, was my life valuable? Did I live a valuable life? And I think one of the areas to explore here is intrinsic value. I believe each human being has intrinsic value. Just because they exist, they're valuable. There's no amount of value. It's just you're valuable. And but a lot of people doubt their value. To their value is equated to a contribution, and they're valuable, and so life is valuable. However, I could go on that path. Do you want to say something?
Well, I do with value. I'm actually grappling with that right now. I've never had a birthday that I've had an issue with ever. And this year I kind of am.
So
and no, that's not it at all. And that's maybe, it is, the value piece, I know as a mother, from my experience, I never feel like I do enough. Like I can't do enough for them. It is like the bucket's never full. And that's something I've worked on. And it's an entitlement piece to a certain degree.
I'm
And
sure a
it's a
lot of
helicopter.
people can relate.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, anyway, and I feel that death is that way, that what you're talking about, not doing enough. I mean, because we can compare ourselves to the people that really, who knows if they really exist. We can compare ourselves to the people that are, feeding orphans in Africa. And did we do enough? No, not compared to them. But what if we did? What if just raising 3 children that go off into the world and they're decent husbands and they're decent fathers and they're decent humans? What if that's it, And then they go on. But I don't know. I think, I know with children, I can't imagine losing my child. I can't imagine a worse fear. I mean, that is my biggest fear. That would be my continuous hell. And I know I need to rewrite that verbiage. But what I realize is that it's when you see someone suffer and there's nothing you can do about it, I almost think the fear is you going through it. Like you going through that loss, like the fear of that loss, because they've moved on. 100% people that have visited me from across the veil, people that have died and come back.
They're good.
And then friends that we know, 100% of the time, 100% of the time, they come back and say, I'm fine. I've been trying to get in touch with you. This is amazing. They don't come back and say, yeah, this is kind of shitty and I really want to be back. And I can't believe you didn't ever, And so
I know it's hard for humans. It's not hard for them once they've passed. They're stoked.
No, they're home. They're back.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, my whole thing too is I think that if I don't know if this is the right way to view it, but if like you've moved, I mean, granted, yes, I have access to you still, but if you moved and kind of, there are those people in our lives that have kind of floated out of our lives, they're at a bus stop, they go one way, you go the other way.
Sure.
And people that you never thought, I always laugh at this because everyone, when they first have their babies, they assign these godparents. And then 10 years after they're like, yeah, we have no idea where they are, and it's never, the godparents are never ultimately usually who you think they will be, that they'll be in your lives forever. But what if it's the same thing? What if they just left? It's the same thing. She moved to Bangkok. I haven't talked to her in 5 years. Well, you wouldn't cry and mourn, but if someone dies, you do.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I get there's a finality, and I know that this isn't exactly what I said last time, but I think death is so interesting.
It is really interesting. Well, and I think too, through the work that I do, the hypnotherapy stuff, people can actually experience previous death experiences by going into past lives. And it's very common to go through the death scene in this very kind of like matter-of-fact way. Oh, I'm getting ready to die. Oh, what's happening? Oh, I'm in my bed getting ready. Who's there? Oh, matter of fact, blah, blah, blah. And then they go through the death scene and there's just an immediate insight. You get insight into the lifetime because we're only just part of us in this life, just like about this much of our soul self. And the rest of us is non-physical. That time was really focused on this, or that time I really struggled with this. But next time, maybe what I want to do is this. And the idea that we're eternal and we get to continuously grapple with whatever it is that we want to grapple with.
Well, and that's okay. So yes. And I also recently, they showed me the earth as a ball. And of course, and then beyond
not a flat pancake.
No, that's not how they showed it to me. But
not
it was
a wedge.
Ball. And then not a pie. It's not a wedge. No. You're funny, honey. No, but it was this ball, and right beyond that was like a net. And what they showed me is that you bounce back and forth. You reincarnate. And usually it's in relationship. It is in relationship with soul growth, but not because of karma.
Right.
Karma's been bastardized really
I agree.
Around it. It is until you feel like it's sort of like you're in school. And then as soon as you're done with school, you move on. And most people, when they're seniors, they become senioritis, they have senioritis and they're ready to go. And it's the same thing. And so
that makes
they
sense.
say that, so for example, I was talking to Emma, a friend of ours, and she's an incredible medium. I mean, she brings people through with names. Like, I have this person here and that person here, and she will give you names. And there's no way she could have
Specifics.
found any of these people.
Yeah.
Especially the first time I spoke with her, I didn't know her. So I mean, now I've known her for years. But I asked her, I said, I haven't seen my grandfather, Jack. And my Jack came to me when he came to like three of us when he crossed. And I remember him coming in my late 20s, and it was like he brought my other grandfather. And they came arm in arm. And then after that, I didn't feel him. And I wasn't really that awake at that point. And so I didn't even really pay attention. But looking back, I can see that. And then James Van Prague, we were at a big conference thing, and he actually brought my grandfather through, the big grandfather, the one grandfather number 2. And he said, oh yeah, he's with you all the time. And I found that really interesting. And I think that the other one brought him. So back to Emma. So Emma and I were talking. I said, well, do you know where Jack is? And she's like, I can't find him. I said, I can't either. And I was really reading Cryon a lot at that point, and I'm really interested in the grid and bringing these new energies to the grid and recalibrating the grid around the earth and the frequency of the earth. And I believe that's what's going on to a very large degree right now. And she said, and this is out of nowhere, she said, I'm getting something about him being on the grid. He's doing work on the grid. I'm like, that makes sense. And he's my family line that carries this imprint that I have through my mother, my grandfather, the grid print. Yeah. And so it's a really interesting thing. And so I think that it's not to say that he won't come back. It's not to say that, it's just that you can go off and do work. I mean, you can cruise.
Your focus can be elsewhere.
It can be. It absolutely can be. And so that idea that we bounce back and forth and karma, and I'm a level 10, and I love Ainsley McLeod, and he talks a lot about that. And there's a lot of truth to what I know he says, but I think I'm not really sure that it's so quantifiable that I'm a level 10. I don't have to come back. I don't think you have to come back after level 1. I just think you want to come back. They say that it's like a pull that you have. You're like, I think I really would like to go take that night class in pottery.
And I think too, there's a translation thing, because whatever we're ready for, whatever frequency we're sort of resonating at, it comes through this apparatus that is our human body, our expanded consciousness, our mind. Exactly. And so it's going to make sense to us. Like, for example, I do the Life Between Lives sessions or spiritual sessions where the client is in the spirit world. Sometimes it's very important for the client to have actual individuals, beings that they're working with. And other times there's just a vast expanse of downloadable information. It's just energy. So sometimes it needs to have personality. Sometimes they need to look like, robed beings. Sometimes they look like Greek, tunic wearing beings. And sometimes they're animals.
Who is this you're talking about?
Just people in general have the way that they interpret it through, so that it makes sense to them, so that it's resonant for them. The way that it's expressed in their session will come through in different ways.
So that's a lot like screen dreams. And I'd like to tell you about that, but let's go back real quick. That is I can see people cross, and
cool.
That is, I've always had that. And it's an interesting thing. And when my grandmother crossed, my grandfather, Jack, the one I was just talking about, like my grandmother was this beautician, and she'd like smoke, and she had big hair, and she'd, beer batter shrimp, and everything was very sweet. Kerry Ann, and she's just the sweetest thing ever. And she's like 4'10". She's tiny, and she wore high heels always. She was a hairdresser.
Firecracker.
Oh, she was a trip. And so she had a stroke. I mean, she basically drank coffee and smoked. I mean, she never really ate, and she was tiny. And so she had a stroke, and massive stroke. And so she was bedridden.
She was done.
She was done. But I mean, she was in this state for 10 years. I mean, she was in like the final bedridden state for probably 6 years. And so she was in this beautiful home. Oh, no, just, a little bit of, anyway. And so I don't think she was really there. I think she'd come and go, but so she was, but it was interesting because when she crossed, it's like the wall, and her bed was against the wall. And so the wall disappeared, And
Mm.
it was and my grandfather stepped forward. They got hitched after 2 weeks, and they were married to the day he died. I mean, he died young, but
Wow.
they were married. And yeah, and so he was there. Jack came to pick her up. Her family, like the extended people, were behind. But
Mhm.
Sam,
No. I'm just
so
saying thumb in a ride.
yeah, well, and they were back, and she went forward, and she turned around and looked at her body, and she's like, oh my hell, are you kidding me? That's what I looked like. I mean, she was just horrified. But it is like this massive, it, so you say that there's an instant, like you just know. So I liken it to wearing really great noise canceling ear things, and you take them off, and all of a sudden you can hear everything. Like, oh my, okay,
Oh, that's
and
a
so
really great analogy. Yeah.
what she was saying is that it is like she held on for so long because of the dogma, because she thought she wasn't enough and she was going to go to hell, and who wants to go there? And so I'd rather stay here in a fetal ball than
Such a powerful control mechanism, I'm telling you.
it really is. But then they turned and they left, and I don't really hear from her. I heard from her at a funeral recently, and she came around. She was my mom, who, God love her. I mean, I really can kind of mess up her paradigm sometimes, but she understands. And so she said, is my mother here? And it's like, no, she's right over there. And she was with her sister, who was still alive. She was standing there, and we were
Wow.
on the different side of the church, I guess. And so then my grandmother said, it was my brother, he was a pallbearer, and my mom and it was me, my mom, and my aunt, and we're all her family. And so she comes around, and I even turned my hand up. I could feel her holding my hand.
Wow.
And then she left. And so my aunt, who, not a lot of this, not a lot of this in her, or it's all in her. It's just so integrated into her. She's interesting. Sends me a text. I don't know if I've ever had a text from my aunt, maybe once ever. And this is right when I kind of did the pink hair. And my aunt sent me a thing saying, I'm sorry. She said, hi, sweetie. I'm sorry I had to leave so quickly. I would just want to tell you, I love your hair. I love you. It's like, that wasn't from my aunt. I called my mom. She's like, that my sister would never write that. I said, I
Yeah.
know, it's your mother. Your mother wrote me a
Wow.
text. She sent me a text. So it's
Wow.
very interesting.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
See,
Yeah. So
you
death is
you
not a
can come
scary thing.
through. No. Well, and my dad, same thing. We need to probably close up because it's already been 2.5 hours. I mean, 1.5 hours. But when
Oh.
my father died in 2003 after a long illness, 2 weeks. Well, the first day he was everywhere. There were cardinals and rainbows, and it was just, you could feel them everywhere. And birds were coming up doing very uncharacteristic things. Like, how a bird looks out of the side, their eyeball, it's like right here. And these birds would be like, hello. And then
No.
nothing for 2 weeks. And then I had this really vivid dream. And I don't typically have super vivid dreams, but this one was very vivid, where I'm talking to him on the phone, and he's telling me, and I say this a lot in my show, I think, I'm fueling up my pod. I'm going to go away for a little while to work on some stuff. I'm at a way station, so I'm going to be going away. I just wanted to let you know that I'm good. He's fueling up his pod.
He's fueling up his pod. He's heading out. Doesn't that make you? Did you ever hear that thing about? They were saying that heaven is actually a planet, and that, like, when we die, we go to this other dimension, this other realm, and it's like a place like a real place you go to. And someone even said the
It
Pleiades.
wouldn't
I don't know,
shock
but
me.
that would kind of fall into place with what you're saying with your dad. I mean, I don't know that I buy that. It doesn't really resonate with me, but it's kind of an interesting idea.
I
Make a
think
good
we
movie.
as humans have a hard time really understanding the extent to which our energy is anchored there, and how it plays out. So I think it's more about what feels resonant to a person, and that's how it's going to show up. And so it's how
Exactly.
non-physical serves our and supports us in our day-to-day, so it doesn't throw us so off kilter. It's like, yeah, whatever you need it to be, it will be. It's like the saying, if you believe that Jesus is going to meet you at the gate, and this was in like Dr. Newton's book, I think it's Journey of Souls, or maybe it's Destiny, where Jesus meets this very religious person at the gate, and then and this was like through a past life regression, meets them at the gate, and then after a while a mask is ripped off and it's their guide. And it's like, if this is how you need to be served in order to feel complete in your soul experience, you know, the universe is not going to have a hard time giving that to you. That's no sweat. Like, sure, here you go. Or if you're convinced you're going to go to hell, here you go. Here's a little bit of hell for you. And when you're ready to have some other interpretation, by all means, just step over here.
Wiggle your pinky, we'll come get you.
Yeah,
yesterday we started doing these reviews on different metaphysical show. Like we did What Dreams May Come yesterday, and that's exactly. So he passes.
Yes.
His mentor shows up, and it's really his son, and it's like whatever you need. And the thing that they said throughout the entire thing was, you are what you think. You are what you think. Your world is what you think it is. Period. That's
again
it.
And again, over and over.
That's a good place to leave.
Yeah. And I love you, and I appreciate your contribution to this conversation. And I want to keep the conversation going. And I don't know how people will respond other than, people, if you have something to contribute, if you have a question, please ask questions. Let's get this conversation going. Like, what's on your mind? What is juicy for you? What is holding you back? Like, we'll talk about it. And I'm going to have Kerry on the show more now that I'm picking back up again. And so share with us. And also, you know, in her show, you know, go check out her show. Alice Eats the Apple. She's phenomenal. And I mean, look at her cool background. I mean, come on, like, who wouldn't want to watch her? She's just so cool. I mean,
like your background.
She's just cool. Anyway, all of you, I hope you had fun listening. Tell me your thoughts. And next week, I believe we're having Cynthia Sue Larson, but it might be Steve Nobel. We're having both of those guys. So stay tuned. I will, maybe I'll advertise it. Maybe I won't, but just come join me on my YouTube channel, and you're all invited, and share and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I love you, Kerry, and I love you all.
Love you too, Mama.
All right. Bye. Good job, girl. Oh, it's so